You're listening to the Help, I'm a Contractor podcast with Seth Lewis. This podcast is dedicated to helping hardworking contractors share ideas with other contractors. Seth is educated through the School of Hard Knocks, a contractor, business coach, and author. Seth helps contractors break through recurring challenges by helping them study themselves first. Seth's unique approach is guaranteed to take you from your current reality to your business dream. Learn more at www.startthemo.com. Here is your host, Seth Lewis.
Today on the show, I have Parker Kerns. Really excited about this episode because if you are a business owner and you're wondering what the younger generation is looking for, you want to listen to this episode. Parker is going to share his insights of how he became a construction manager and project manager at Veith Construction Corporation and Civil Engineering. It's a remarkable story because as owners, we want to know, how do we attract the young talent? At a young age, he's been able to succeed, and you want to pay attention to this episode. So let's bring him on. Parker, welcome to the show.
Hi, Seth. It's great to be on. Thanks for having me this afternoon.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about yourself, what you're into, where you work.
So I'm 24. I just completed my first full construction season as a full-time project manager and estimator. Let's see. I've been working for Veith Construction now for about 5 years, part-time in the summers, and then the first full-time year was this one. And I don't know, I got a dog and live with two roommates, and I'm just young and got a girlfriend and getting started in life, so excited.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about your story, and I'd like you to share a little bit more from your perspective, how you got into the construction and you actually got to become a business manager or construction manager or project manager, whatever you call it in your role, pretty early. And I think there's a lot of people out there, especially owners. There's two people that can benefit from what we're going to talk about today and your insights. I think it's one, the person that is maybe similar to your shoes, wants to get to a point where they can be a project manager. So I'd like to look at what that looks like. And then I'd also like to look at and talk about, for owners, how do they let go and let somebody like you succeed and attract people like yourself to actually do great work in a short period of time. So I'll let you pick which subject do you want to tackle first?
I'd say we can talk about maybe the owner just kind of being able to find somebody that's young and let go and let them kind of take the reins at what they're doing first, if that works for you.
Yeah, perfect. So why don't you take me through your journey? So starting with your background, growing up, was anybody in your family involved in construction? How did you get into it? And then what led you to where you're at today? I mean, I'm sure there's a pretty cool story to that.
Yeah. So I grew up kind of around construction. My dad has been a civil construction superintendent for the last 25 years now or so. So pretty much since I was born, he's been doing it. And I remember being young, 6, 7, 8 years old and going to work with him on Saturdays sometimes. As a kid, it was pretty cool to get to go ride in heavy equipment with your dad on a Saturday sometimes. But that was kind of my initial exposure to construction. I didn't really see it as a career for me early on. I was leaning towards some type of business degree when I enrolled in school. And I remember I was working at a local grocery store, and it was the winter time, and I was like, man, I really don't like this job like during college. And I was like, I need something that pays better, So I talked to my dad and I was like, hey, maybe we get a construction job this summer, bring me on, see what it's like, and see if it's something I'm interested in. And so we did, and I did a part-time summer, and after that I was hooked. I didn't want to do anything else but that. I spent some time overseas with the military, took a couple semesters off school, and came back and ended up changing my major to construction management that year. So that was kind of how that came together right away there.
What did you feel when you got into the construction? What was it about construction that kind of drew you into it?
I would say that it was mostly like I wanted people to. I liked what construction offers because I think it's really cool to see projects come together. But another thing that I was thinking about is, hey, like I like to think of myself as, a respectable young individual. So I was thinking, everybody sees construction workers as the rough guys, the kind of the riffraff of the world. And I really don't think that that's the case. And I was like, maybe I can make a difference here by, trying to be different from the norm of what you see. And, I understand there's different roles in construction, but I think there's a lot of really smart and well-educated people that work in the construction industry. And a lot of people miss that sometimes.
I mean, you could repeat that for the rest of the show, and I don't think it would get old. I mean, I love hearing that because it's so true. There's so many talented, amazing, smart people that are in construction, and the blue collar industry really gets a bad rap or just a weird perception that still's going on today. And I really don't know why. Yeah. But it's just the way that it is. And I think the more people, and hopefully this show, and as we continue to talk about it, people tune in and become passionate about spreading the word and sharing it. And I love the way that you shared your journey to say, this is something I wanted to shed light on for other people and even be an example in your own community. We all have people that are watching us. Mm-hmm. So somebody's watching you and saying he can do it, and maybe they want to do it because you do it. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So from there, you got into it, involved with your dad a little bit in construction. What were some of the next steps? You went to college.
So I went to school, and I kind of knew my track right away. I mean, I was fortunate to have a good early understanding of what type of construction I wanted to do and where I had even a good idea of where I wanted to work. But for a lot of people, that isn't always the case. So what I always tell people, I mean, I'm passionate about the type of work that I do, so I can talk all day about it. But I tell people, find whatever type of construction is best for you, and then, go from there. There's tons of, universities or, schools in general, they offer career fairs and stuff all the time. But really the best thing you can do is get a job in construction. Even if it's just like a labor job, you're going to get exposure to what, is out there for the different industries. Or you might find something you don't like, and then, you can check that off.
Yeah. So after you worked with your dad, then did you apply to a bunch of places? Did you get an internship? Tell me a little bit about that process.
Yeah. So I actually did kind of a cool role there. I ended up working simultaneously while going to school. So I was actually doing like estimating and bidding on work. Probably my junior year, I did that in the winter. And then my senior year, I was doing that all winter long while attending my final semester of school. And then sat down with the owner of the company that I was working for at the time and said, had the conversation, are we going to have a spot here when I'm, this is probably my junior year. Are we going to, what are you looking for me to do here? Are you looking for me to transition into a role here full time, or, should I be applying for places elsewhere? And I looked at some other places to work, but I just, based on the experience that I had and the role that they had allowed me to take on early on, I felt like it was the right fit. And I just ended up staying on track and then moved just right into full-time work with them. So
I think younger students or people that are getting into the the field don't do what you just did, or what you did in the past of reaching out and asking the question. I think that's really important. That, I believe, is a foundation of the success and what propelled you there. And I think the inverse is true for owners. So I applaud your owner for having that conversation with you, because that creates a good mutual beneficial relationship. And I don't feel like a lot of the owners or leaders are doing that with the young talent. They want the young talent. They
Right.
want the construction people, and they say that they're passionate about the industry, but they might not be willing to have the conversation to say, hey, Parker, what do you want, and how can we help you get there? And it sounded like it started off with a win just from that.
Yeah. I mean, the way I saw it, I guess, is okay, like if I wasn't going to fit there, I would fit somewhere else. So like, at least if you have that conversation, even if you're working at an internship at, a giant company that is worldwide, at least have a conversation and say, hey, do you think that there's a legitimate chance that I can get hired here after? Or, should I be looking at something else and just using this as good experience for my resume?
And I want to highlight one other thing from that question. One of the things that I encourage people to do, as a business coach, is get rid of the gray. So black and white, the yeses or nos, the maybes really don't advance the cause. So by them saying, yes, you have a spot here, that really moves the needle forward. That builds momentum in your life and in the company's life. And if they also say, no, we don't have a spot, it does the exact same thing. It builds momentum in your life, because you can keep on going and find a fit for you. So I think that's really important. And I just want to highlight that question on both sides, for the owner and, the prospective team member. What would you say were some of the next steps? So you have that conversation. What did you do from there, and how did you progress?
So once I knew that I was going to be there, it actually made me more comfortable in my role. It makes you less afraid to make a mistake, maybe, because that, okay, hey, like, I'm here to learn. So I'm the new guy, I'm not the new guy at the company, but I'm the new young person that's going to enter the industry as a whole. So here, I guess, like, for example, something I did right away is, okay, I bid the job, I got the job. And then the very first thing that I did, when that project manager that was going to run that job called me and said, hey, you're the site guy, we're going to have you come out and start this, I'd like to have a meeting this day. I was like, the first thing I told him, I said, listen, this is my first job. I don't really know what I'm doing, so I just want you to know that. And he said, that's fine. I remember those days too. I'll help you out. And it actually ended up we developed a really good relationship over that entire course of the project. But I was just really fortunate to have somebody like that, that was able to be understanding and know that, I don't know everything yet. And so that helped me a lot. And I think that's important, when you're coming in, that you need to don't be afraid to tell them that, you're not, this isn't what you haven't done this before. Because if they know that, they're not going to be as hard on you right off the get-go. There's going to be room for you to make mistakes and grow.
Great point. I think one of the things that I see as consistency in what you're saying is just avoiding those gray areas. If you don't know something, say it. If you aren't sure, it's so often that owners and leaders assume that you might know, and a lot of times it's the common things that they take for granted every day. If they've been doing it for 30 years, they obviously think this one area, let's say, is just common sense, when in reality, it's not. It's something that they learned over 30 years, and now it's common sense, but it wasn't at the time. So I think reminding them, and again, I think this is a great episode for the owners that are looking to say, how do you make it work? Because when they want new talent. They want people in the construction industry. But then when they bring somebody on and it doesn't work out, they're sitting there scratching their head and wondering why. Well, these are great tips to say, remember that if you're coming in, you probably don't know a lot, but your potential is terrific. You know a lot, you can do it, but you just need to be honest with each other and support each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the biggest thing that helped me get through my first full season was that I had good support around me. When I didn't know something, I had either guys there that had been doing it a long time, or I had people that I could call that, you know, and I think that's probably the most important thing for somebody that is new coming into construction. You have to be okay with, you know, you don't know it all, and that's okay. But, you know, and vice versa, that owner, like you said, they got to be okay with, okay, they know you don't know it all, but they might not in a sense too. So it's got to be upfront. There's just got to be a lot of communication, especially in your first couple of months of working.
Yeah, and your setup, another thing that you said that made you feel successful or that was good in your role was you were able to see kind of a 360 approach. You were able to bid it, run it, and I think you even said maybe even get some prospects. So just tell me how those things and in general made you be able to scale up quicker in your organization.
Sure. So I started off, I started in construction as a construction laborer. So putting pipe in the ground, checking grade, you know, doing the dirty, the in the hole. And that was another thing too. I worked for a smaller company. So I was still doing that stuff this year as a project manager, but that's okay because I like to do that kind of thing. And, you know, that's not everyone's role everywhere they go. But the thing is what worked for me, I think so well was just.
This show is brought to you by Momentum U. If you are an owner and you're ready to scale up and break past recurring challenges, it's time to start studying you. You are the only common piece between all your success and recurring challenges. You are the only person that can unlock your untapped momentum. Let us show you how. Go to www.startthemo.com to learn more.
You know, being able to see it come full circle. Like, so I had worked in that type of construction. Then I got the blueprints put in front of me. Then I got, you know, the numbers put in front of me. Okay, can you make these numbers come together to make a reasonable cost to do this job? Yeah, I can. You know, how much you've been out in the field long enough, you should have an idea of how long some things take. So I put all that together, got the estimate, submitted it, revised it a couple of times. There was some communication between the prime contractor and us that they wanted, you know, little changes in prices here and there, you know, better complete package as a whole. And then, as soon as that job started, the first person they called was me, and I was the first person there, and I was the person who broke ground on the job. It was kind of cool. Like, I got to be the first person to break ground. I got to be there the whole, you know, all throughout the job, watch it come together. I was the one who, you know, thought, okay, I'm standing out here watching these guys work and thinking, well, there went the price for that I bid, you know, it's gone. They're way over on this item. And so it was, and I actually just sat down last week and went through the financials, and we ended up profiting over $100,000 on the job as a whole. So it was a good all around experience. So, and when I sat down with the owner, and he showed me, he's like, okay, these items you went over on, these items, you know, you're pretty good. These items you saved some money. He's like, there's a couple usually that make or break a job. And he's like, these two probably made it for you. So it was a really good, like, teaching. It almost felt like I was in school, but, you know, I was getting paid too. So it was nice. But I think that's the biggest thing is I learned way more in the first year of the job than in the 4 years of school. But that's not me knocking school. I do think it's important too.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you say when you think about the owner and owners of businesses? That had to be pretty difficult for him to put that much trust in you. I really think it's an awesome story, and I think it's a great example. And again, I applaud the owner for taking the time. I mean, just what you said. I mean, he took the time to go over the estimate at the end of the job and show you where you won and where you were off a little bit. What do you think owners need to do more of to make this happen? And where do you see, in your opinion, maybe where they fall short?
I think that so where I think the owner where he had the most trust for him falls on me is when he goes through and revises my, he goes through and checks my estimate before, I send it out. Okay. But the thing is he doesn't know anything about that job. He's never seen the plans. He's never gone through it himself. So he doesn't know if what I'm estimating is correct. My prices could be off because my numbers to whatever items those are could be off. So he's trusting me to do a correct quantity takeoff on that job and make sure that, he's just making sure that the price is matched, that type of work. Okay. It's reasonable for that type of work, but he doesn't actually know the whole scale of the work. He left that up to me to figure out. And so that's where I think, the most trust came from him to me to make sure that I did that correctly. As far as where the shortcomings maybe come with that, I would say that maybe him not knowing what the full scope of the work is could be a shortcoming, but also a shortcoming for maybe our relationship or with other owners, not ours necessarily, but other owners, is they don't want to be involved in, they kind of throw the people into the fire, but they're not willing to help them out when they need it, which that's kind of, I knew what I was doing for the most part, but there were some things that I had questions on, and that's okay. I mean, they just have to be willing to work with somebody who doesn't know it all. He's been doing it for 40 years. So things that just pop off the top of his head, they don't do that in mine. So I think that's where, like we talked about earlier, they got to step back and be like, okay, this guy doesn't know it all yet. I need to help him get to that point where, I can kind of cut him loose and then, just check his work basically at the end of it.
So what are signs, if I'm an owner and I'm looking to bring on somebody like yourself? It sounds like there was trust built pretty quickly. I mean, to be able to turn it over and say, hey, you do this estimate on, it sounds like pretty large jobs. How is that trust built, or how can an owner do that? Or no, what are they looking for? Or what did you do to get that trust?
I think what I did was I made sure that for one, you want to make sure that all your work that you're doing, to how you came up with what you're coming up with, you back that up. You got that on paper, because every time I go in there, I'm prepared for him to ask me 15 questions about this item or that item, or why I did this way, why I did it that way. And then if I have an explanation for that, that builds trust, because he knows that I'm not just guessing, or that I'm not just, doing it without actually looking deeper into something. He knows I'm reading the drawings, I'm reading the spec book, I'm making sure that, I'm covering the items correctly. And I think that helps build trust right away. Another thing that built trust is just, I had an established relationship because I'd been working there for a little bit. I wasn't a new guy off the block. I wasn't trying to be like the next big thing. I didn't, a lot of times, sometimes, college graduates, not to knock people, but they can get a big head. I mean, you spend some time at school, you think you know a thing or two, but that's not always the case. And I think we avoid that a lot, or we don't run into that as much in construction, but it's still out there. And that's what you don't want to be. I think that'll deteriorate trust right away if you're trying to tell people that, you know it all and you went to school for this and, this is the new way to do it. It's all about being humble, being able to accept your role for what it is and just move forward.
What would you say is the key to attracting more people to this industry from your perspective as being somebody that's younger, somebody that is passionate about the construction industry? There's businesses and owners and companies everywhere that are dying for more people like you. What's the key? How do we get them in there?
I would say, depending on your size of your company and stuff, have a good website, a good social media page. That's actually one thing that I will say that our company lacks. We're not super technologically ahead of everybody, but what attracts me to when I'm scrolling through Instagram or something, and I have like a separate construction Instagram account. When I'm scrolling through there, I'm looking for the contractors. They got the drone footage, they've got all the stuff that, that's one thing to me that, can attract young people because, us, we're glued to our phones all the time. It's just how we are. It's how I grew up, unfortunately, but fortunately too. Another thing is just, you have, like a tour of a construction site. There's just certain things that to draw the right people to it. They don't always know what's out there. Like there's a lot of people that they'll be like, oh, I would have maybe got into that if I would have, known that that's what they're actually doing. I knew nothing about, the work that I was going to get into until I actually went out and saw what it takes. And I think that from a young person's perspective, the more exposure that we can get in, the younger age is better. Like we need to stop teaching kids that, you have to go to school and get a degree and get a good job. That's not necessarily true. There's a lot of young people that are going to be entrepreneurs too. What's wrong with that? Or what's wrong with, saying, hey, we have this trade school expo coming up at school instead of, it's, an accounting firm or something. Just, don't be afraid to show the trades to young kids, especially even like really young. I'm talking 10, 12-year-old kids, junior high kids. What's wrong with showing them the trades and showing them the good side of construction? Because a lot of parents, they see construction workers and they're like, no, I don't want you to do that. Stay away from that. But there's good money in trades. There's a lot of people that don't realize, you can kind of skip the education piece and go get, as you call it, a hard knock education and make some real money.
Yeah, that's great. The hard knock educated. There's a huge thing to that, huge value. It's really powerful because like you said, learning on the job, that is the hard knock education. It's learning as you go. And when you can combine that also with what you know and what you studied, it really gives another perspective. And it's just explosive. So, I think you've done a great job and your approach. Is there anything in the construction industry that you think that you've seen that you think should be brought to more light? The labor and the awareness is one. Is there anything else that, you're passionate about or want other owners to know about?
I would just say, from an employee standpoint, because I'm an employee, I don't own the company, to an owner, just if you have people that are, tenured good workers, make sure you appreciate them because you might not be out there doing the labor and the stuff, but a lot of the times those people, they're the backbone of your company. There's a lot of turnover construction work. People jump from company to company all the time, year after year. We see it all the time. I've seen people come and go in my 5 years that I thought, maybe they'll be here a couple of years, maybe they'll be here, 1 year. And that to me is, if you get employees that are willing to stick around, make sure you take care of them, because you're not going to find that's just the way of the world in construction. You're not going to find, for every 10 guys you hire, you might get 2 good ones that are actually going to, be good, hardworking, construction minded guys that, want to advance or move up or move on and get out of that, that laborer's role and move into the better roles. So I just think that you just want to treat the good ones good, because if you don't, they will go find somewhere else to work, because there's plenty of big wig companies, especially if you're like a new, smaller company. There's a lot of big companies that, offer really great benefits and pay. And while they might not have as personable as a relationship in that company with the owner or the other bosses, they know they're going to be taken care of there. And that's huge to most people, is knowing that they're going to be able to take care of themselves and their family at the end of the day, because they're going to get what they need there.
So a lot of times people say, take care of their people. I want to just clarify what that means to you, like somebody like yourself on your end. What does it mean? What are you looking for? I guess is maybe a better question. When people say, I want to be taken care of, what is that? Translate that.
So, I mean, there's a lot of different avenues you could go with this, but for example, I know, here's a personal story that I'll share about something that happened to my dad when he was working construction. So several years ago, he had a hip replacement, and a few years after that, that replacement actually broke. Like, it broke while he was getting it out of his pickup at work or something. And so he had to miss several months of work, and the owner actually ended up paying him for all that time that he missed, even though he wasn't actively able to work all the time. To me, that's a good example of taking care of somebody who's been good to you as an employee, because he's been working there for a long time. So, I mean, that's kind of a rare case scenario. And I know that not everybody's capable of doing that, but to me, that shows that builds trust, and that says, hey, I'm going to take care of you when you're not able to take care of yourself. But I guess for me personally, it just means that, hey, that you're recognizing that I'm doing a good job, and you see that. So, for example, like, I sat down just a little while ago with the owner, and we talked, and I said, so how do you think my first year went? How do you think I did? And he said, I think you did a really good job, actually. And he gave me a raise starting on the first of next year. So just the owners being able to recognize, hey, these guys are doing a good job. They got to be willing to ask questions. And that goes for the employees too. Sometimes you got to tell them what you want or what you need. And if they're not willing to meet that, that's okay. But, that's why, there's other companies out there, I suppose. But I think, like I said, a lot of it is just communication. That's really what it comes down to, is being able to communicate. Do you feel like you're being taken care of, or do you feel like you're being taken advantage of? And if I felt like I was being taken advantage of, guess what? I would go work somewhere else, because that's why there's opportunity out there. People act like you can't get a job. Sometimes there's more than enough. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing your dad's story. That's a really powerful story. And I think that connects to what it means to take care of your people. I mean, that going above and beyond. So that's really powerful. What about advice to students? Anything that you want to say to students?
To students, I would say just don't be afraid to get involved. If your instructors are, especially if you're in college, if you're instructors and you're in a construction management or construction engineering degree, some kind of program track that's going to lead you into the construction industry, ask your instructors about their experience and if they do have experience in the construction industry, because that's one thing that helped me is I actually became pretty close with one of my instructors from my school because he owned a construction company outside of being an instructor at that school. And that helped me kind of get a little bit ahead and just keep, on track with where I'm trying to go. But the other thing I would say is don't go all 4 years without getting a construction job, because you're not going to help yourself. You want to build bridges before you're out in the world, because when you're out there, you can get a little bit from what you know, but it's more who you know. That's the way of the world today. So
Great point. Couple quick questions to end it. First thing that comes to your mind, the construction industry would be better if
there wasn't such a, what's the word I'm looking for? If there was not a stereotype around the construction worker, a negative stereotype, we'll say that.
I can build a blank in my sleep.
Well, I do dirt work, so that's kind of hard. I can build a bid in my sleep probably now. I've done plenty of them.
That's good. I like it. My biggest challenge is
ego. Being able to, not let being the new guy or being the young guy go to your head. And, just because I did a good job this year doesn't mean next year that's going to be the same case. But that's where I want to stay on that track.
my biggest skill is
operating. I like to operate equipment still.
favorite piece of equipment.
Excavator.
What type? What type?
Cat or die. Caterpillar only. John Deere's all right too.
Like it. Ford or Chevy?
Ford. We had all our work trucks are Chevy though, so that doesn't sit too good with me. Ford's too expensive. That's why.
Cabin or beach house?
Probably cabin. Beach gets hot. I get hot enough in the summer working.
Favorite brand of equipment?
Caterpillar.
Caterpillar.
If you want tools, DeWalt.
All right, I like it. Any last advice that you would share to business owners in the construction, things that you want them to take away or know from this episode?
My last thing is just most owners, they're an owner for a reason. So they're either gung-ho and young and they think they're ready for that role as an owner, or they're experienced and they've been an owner for a while. And to me, the owners that stand the test of time are the ones that can communicate well with people. So for me as an employee, the communication with the owner is extremely important. That's what I'll leave it with. Just communicate with your owner and vice versa.
Great show. I really appreciate the time, Parker. Thanks for being on the show and thanks for all your tips for our audience.
Thanks, Seth. It was great being here, and I can't wait to listen to the episode when it comes out. So
thanks again.
Thanks for listening. Like and share with other contractors. Start studying you to unlock your momentum. Go to www.startthemo.com to learn more.